First day in pads today, and it was good. The offense, after looking a little hodgepodge these last couple days, they showed up in force. They rose to the challenge of the added physicality. And this is something that happens during training camp sometimes. And it was hard for me. You guys know it was hard for me as a former defensive lineman to admit that I thought yesterday in the fourth day of no pads, the defensive line was they were bull rushing. They were coming through on power rushes that I don't think that the offense can really respond to when they don't have pads on. This is a constant battle between the offensive and defensive line during training camp, arguing about what would have or wouldn't have been a play. You know, defensive lineman will claim that that would have been called holding. Offensive lineman says, yeah, well, if I could have cut block it. It's usually we're right. But in this instance, I think that the offensive line needed an opportunity in all of this red zone work that they did, because they hadn't done red zone work yet, because why bother when you're not in pads? And they showed, I think, in the run game, a physicality that we were hoping to see, but you can't see with no pads. And then in the pass protection, I think they were solid. You know, there were a couple wins by the defensive line here and there, but even times where they were giving ground, I thought there were some plays that maybe in no pads might have looked like, oh, this, you know, a guy runs past the quarterback, so you figure maybe it was a sack or something. With pads on, the offensive lineman can really stand up to the bull rushes, and they did a good job of it. And we'll talk a little bit more about the offensive line later. But first and foremost, the biggest takeaway was that CJ Stroud, the ball placement specialist, was very much in the office. And the connection with Stefon Diggs was immediately apparent with the first two touchdowns. First touchdown is a fade. He was against Derek Stingley. So in the right end zone, happened right in front of me and Clint Sterner. And then Stefon spiked the ball really hard, and it rolled towards Clint. And I said, Clint, you take it. I can't touch that thing. I can't let the people know how bad I am at ball handling. And then the second touchdown was in the front of the end zone, Kamari Lassiter in coverage. And from my vantage point, I was on the other side of the field. From my vantage point, it looked like Kamari had him pretty well covered, as covered as he could be. Stefon was in front of him, but it was just, again, ball placement specialist CJ Stroud putting the ball right to the pylon at the front of the end zone. And Lassiter may have knocked it out. I think they ruled it a touchdown, but Oh, and on that first touchdown, at first it looked like there was a false start, but they ended up ruling, I think the official ruled that Danielle Hunter had jumped off sides. And I thought, man, there's Blake Fisher that would have had the false start, and he did it exactly when the defensive line shift. It's an old crafty trick you get out of these veteran defensive linemen. You all shift in unison really quickly, and it freaks out the young offensive lineman. And it's funny, and you laugh. Another trick for young offensive linemen to play on young offensive linemen is you just yell, "What's the count? What's the count?" And they don't know, like, if it's loud, sometimes they'll just tell you. And so they're dumb, these young offensive linemen. No matter how smart they are, they're dumb. But and we'll get to Blake Fisher. I thought a pretty good day for him on the total. So CJ Stroud, ball placement specialist. The offensive line in general, I think that when it came to picking up games, when it came to withstanding power rush up the middle, that's what I've been worried about the last couple days. I thought they did a good job of it. I would say Juice Scruggs and Kenyon Green, those are the two guys that were most concerned about. When I was watching, when I was able to see them, I felt like it was a pretty solid effort for them. They were sliding the protection towards Danielle Hunter a lot of the time. So I didn't see a lot of instances of Blake Fisher one-on-one with Danielle Hunter, but I didn't notice Blake Fisher letting up any big plays either. So no news is good news with offensive linemen. For those of you unaware, because somebody yesterday complained about me not talking about Laramie Tunsil. Laramie Tunsil has not practiced yet. We'll get to the training camp absences at the end. But the quarterback, ball placement specialist, that awesome. The offensive line, I thought a very solid day for them. Again, with no tackling, you can't tell exactly, all right, you know, if this would have been a touchdown or not. But Dameon Pierce had some nice blocking in front of him. Probably would have had to break one tackle, which is not something that's hard to believe if you envision some of the tackles, or 7 that Dameon has broken on any given play. And the tight ends showed up big time today. Brevin Jordan with a touchdown early on. Cade Stover went up for a ball, came down, would have had to fight through contact, and did for a touchdown. But like in real tackling, I think it might have been a little bit more difficult. And then Tegan Cotoriano with a touchdown. So they were spreading the ball around. Those weren't all by CJ Stroud, but spreading the ball around to different guys and the names that you want to hear. Stefon Diggs and CJ Stroud did very, very well. 4 of the younger offensive linemen that I want to talk about. Kenyon Green, who we know has looked way more athletic. I thought he looked solid when I was able to watch him today. Juice Scruggs, likewise. Nothing magnificent necessarily out of those guys, but there aren't necessarily a whole lot of opportunities. They looked good en masse when they were getting push in the run game. But then Kendrick Green, the left guard, who's been backing up Kenyon Green, but also playing some center. There's something there, man. He's undersized, but he really works his ass off. Like, he gets after it when he's out in space and trying to block downfield. You can see just how athletic he is. It's just a matter of how he's going to fare versus the bigger, longer defensive tackles. I swear, honestly, when I'm watching, I really feel like he should have been a defensive tackle because he's smaller and he's more compact, but he's not short by defensive lineman standards. He's probably 6'2.5", but he's short by offensive guard standards, and he doesn't have the bulk and size that a Shaq Mason, who's a shorter offensive guard, does. Kendrick's going to have to really utilize every bit of that athleticism to I think, win a spot on the team or also be that swing interior lineman. The other guy that he would be fighting for that swing interior lineman spot is Jared Patterson. I think that if I compare Jared Patterson and Juice Scruggs is just more technique and fundamental sound. You know, he's always got his shoulder square to the line. He's always got his back straight and his hips sunk. He just does things the right way. And it gives me a feeling of like, boy, it'd be hard to find an edge against him. He doesn't give up edges. You know, those edges, those open doors that become a conduit straight to your poor young quarterback, CJ Stroud. And with Patterson, I think it's still more of a work in progress. And Patterson, I mean, he's tall by center standards, so it's an extra challenge for him to kind of get that leverage and that ability to root out taller guys the way that Juice Scruggs, natural leverage is what you call it. But still, I think Patterson, there's definitely something there. We saw that last year. I think he makes the team. It's just a matter of, okay, who do they feel comfortable with? If the center goes down, if the guard goes down, would it be one of those two guys? As far as training camp absences, John Mechie and Nico Collins, I think those were likely just normal rest days. If Mechie misses 2 days in a row or something, we'll hear about it. It's not like you got a vet day or anything, but they're load managing all these guys these days, these kids. The aforementioned Laramie Tunsil, I'm not gonna talk about it anymore until he actually does practice. Okay, just assume that Laramie's not out there until we all say that, yeah, he was out there today. Christian Harris, whatever lingering issue he has, the team's not really talking about it unless I missed something today. Joe Mixon, again, I don't feel as weird about that. I think as a running back, a veteran running back, if he's got any kind of muscle tightness or soreness or anything, they're going to be super careful with him. And then Andrew Beck out again. I am, you know what? I've been criminally negligent in not mentioning this guy, Troy Hairston, who's still on the roster if you'd forgotten about him. Remember, 2 years ago, he was transitioning from being a college outside linebacker to playing fullback in the NFL. And he showed some promise at times, but there were other times he looked like a guy who was on a bad offense who had also never played fullback before. And I think he looks more decisive. He looks like he understands better the reads and everything that happens very, very, very fast. So we've got a genuine fullback competition brewing, which I was told like a decade ago would never happen because the fullback's a dying position, you see. But then this Kyle Juszczyk comes along, as well as multiple other fullbacks in the league that can be blocking and wide receiving threats. I think Harrison could do that. He's made some athletic plays as a receiver before. We've seen it. It's just a matter of, hey, can he be enough of an asset to keep him out on the field? So battle between Hairston and Beck is a coming whenever Beck comes back. And then CJ Henderson out again today. I'd say Jeff Okudah right now has a leg up on CJ Henderson, maybe literally if Hender's issue is a leg issue. And then Kamari Lassiter, who's steadily getting better. I think like today, that touchdown or possible touchdown that he led up to Stefon Diggs, it wasn't because he was in a bad position or anything. Just a great play by CJ Stroud and Stefon Diggs. So there you have it. First day of pads, day 5 of training camp. Please like, subscribe. I'll keep you guys updated every day. Going to try to respond or reply or react, one of the re's, to Kamari Lassiter a little bit later, unless I fall asleep.